Welcome to the fourth episode of the Sports World with Patrik. And of course, this is the second part to the NCAA women's hockey transfer portal. So, as promised, we're going to start off with the Hockey East Conference. In the Hockey East Conference, you have the Boston College Eagles, the Boston University, UConn, Holy Cross, Maine, Merrimack, New Hampshire, Northeastern, Providence, and Vermont. So let's go ahead and get into the who's in the transfer portal at the moment. So Boston College has not added anybody from the transfer portal, but does have 3 players in the transfer portal, including 2 that we did talk about in the previous episode, which would be their senior forward, Caroline Gofferdo. Did play, of course, Caroline did play 34 games during her senior campaign, had 8 goals and 10 assists for a total of 18 points. And of course, she is transferring to Clarkson, along with Sydney Fess, the senior defenseman who played 36 games during her senior campaign and had 4 goals and 11 assists for 15 points. Both Sydney and Caroline are going to Clarkson. The last player in the transfer portal at the moment for Boston College would be Maddie Cornwell Cahill, the junior defenseman. Did not play any games during her junior campaign and has 0 goals and 0 assists during her senior campaign. Next, for Boston University, we have already talked about one player here, which is Riley Walsh. Was added from the transfer portal from Union. Was the sophomore forward from Union who played 35 games during during Riley's sophomore campaign for 11 goals and 16 assists for a total of 27 points. Was the leading scorer at Union. So who all is in the transfer portal for Boston University? With Boston University, they have quite a few players in the transfer portal at the moment, including their leading scorer, Lacey Martin, the senior forward, who, Lacey, of course, during her senior campaign, played 35 games, had 14 goals and 13 assists for a total of 27 points. Next is Adriana Calderon, their senior defenseman who played 35 games during her senior campaign, had 3 goals and 8 assists for a total of 11 points. Adriana is leaving Boston University to go to New Hampshire. Next is Julia Shalunsky, the senior defenseman who played 17 games during her senior campaign, had 1 goal and 3 assists for a total of 4 points. Julia has not yet committed anywhere just yet. Next, of course, is Madison Cardarsi, the senior defenseman, played 35 games, and during her 35 games during her senior year, she had 2 goals and 1 assist for a total of 3 points. Next is their freshman forward, Ella Huntley. Ella played 22 games during her freshman campaign, had 1 goal and 4 assists. Ella has not yet committed to anywhere just yet from Boston University. Next is Michaela Blomquist, the freshman forward. Michaela, of course, played 15 games during her freshman campaign, did not have a goal or an assist. Michaela has not yet committed to anywhere outside of Boston University. Next is Jackson Kinsler, their freshman forward. Jackson played 36 games during her freshman campaign, had 1 goal and 1 assist for a total of 2 points for the season. She has not committed anywhere yet. Next is Brooke Disher, their sophomore defenseman. Played 35 games during her sophomore year, and of course had 3 goals and 8 assists for a total of 11 points. She is leaving Boston University to go to Ohio State, and of course Brooke is also a former U18 player for Team Canada. The next school on this list for Hockey East is UConn. UConn has not added anybody into the transfer portal from the transfer portal, but has added two players are in the transfer portal at the moment, including the senior defenseman Bridget McGuire from UConn. Bridget did not play any games during her freshman campaign, and of course did not have any goals or assists for that reason. Next is Catherine Scottsdale. We talked about her in the last episode here. She's going to from she's leaving UConn. Catherine, of course, during her senior year, played 30 games, had 9 goals and 5 assists for a total of 14 points. And Catherine's leaving UConn to go to Quinnipiac. Next on the list is Holy Cross. Holy Cross has not added anybody just yet in from the transfer portal, but does have 4 players in the transfer portal at the moment. So here are the 4 players that are in the transfer portal for Holy Cross. Their senior forward, Bryn Solera. Bryn played 33 games during her senior campaign, had 3 goals and 11 assists for a total of 14 points. Of course, Bryn has not yet committed anywhere and is still sitting in the transfer portal at the moment. Next is the senior goaltender, Maddie Beck, and of course a former U18 player for Team Canada. Maddie did play 23 games during her senior campaign and had a 2.8 save percentage, or goals against average, a .909 save percentage, and had 5 wins during her senior year. Next is the sophomore forward, Alexis Perry. Alexis, during her sophomore campaign, did play 18 games and had 5 goals and 4 assists for a total of 9 points. Next, last but not least, for Holy Cross is the defenseman, or the sophomore defenseman, Casey Brogel. She did play 34 games during her senior campaign, had 2 goals and 9 assists for a total of 11 points during her sophomore career. Next school here is Maine. Maine is adding 1 player to the portal. From the portal, they're adding the sophomore forward from Minnesota Duluth, Danny Brunette. Danny, of course, played 35 games during her sophomore campaign, and she did have 2 goals and 2 assists. She is going to Maine. Next in the transfer portal, these are the following players who are in the transfer portal at the moment for Maine. Is, of course, Anna LaRose, their senior goaltender. She did play 4 games, had a 2.61 goals against average and a .897 save percentage. Did have 1 win. Anna is leaving Maine to go to Lindenwood. Next in the transfer portal is Jordan Matheson, the senior goaltender. Jordan did play 17 games during her senior campaign, had a 1.86 goals against average and a .929 save percentage. She did have 7 wins during her senior campaign. She has not yet committed to anywhere from out of the transfer portal to Maine. Next is Olivia King, the senior defenseman out of Maine. She did play 17 games Olivia did play 17 games during her senior campaign and had 0 goals and 1 assist for a total of 1 point. She also has not yet committed to anywhere outside of the transfer portal from Maine. Next is Bria Holm, the freshman forward. During her freshman campaign, did play 8 games, had 1 goal and no assists for a total of 1 point. Bria's younger sister Ella is, of course, committed to Sacred Heart, so Bria should be committing to Sacred Heart, but that is something to watch out for. Um, Ashley, the next player in the transfer portal for Maine is the freshman defenseman Ashley Kovac. Of course, Ashley played 32 games during her freshman campaign and had 5 goals and 6 assists for a total of 11 points. Ashley is leaving Maine to go to Vermont. Next is Cora Weber, the sophomore defenseman. During Cora's sophomore campaign, she did play 3 games, did not have a goal, but did have an assist, and she has not yet committed to anywhere. Next on the list here is Mary Mack. Mary Mack, of course, has not added any players from the transfer portal, but does have 4 players in the transfer portal, including Allie Quilly, their senior forward. Allie did play 32 games during her senior year, or during her senior campaign, and had 5 goals and 7 assists for a total of 12 points. She is leaving Merrimack to go to St. Cloud of the WCHA. Next is Sydney Lynch, the sophomore forward. Sydney did play 1 game during her sophomore campaign and had no goals and no assists. Next in the transfer portal for Merrimack is Ansley Moulton, the freshman goaltender. Ansley did play 1 game during her freshman campaign. She had a 2.0 goals against average, a .875 save percentage, and 1 win as a goaltender. Next is Aries Molston, the senior goaltender. Aries played 1 game during her senior year, and had a 6.99 goals against average and a save percentage of .833, and no wins at Merrimack. Next in the next school here is going to be New Hampshire. New Hampshire did add 2 players in from the transfer portal, including one that we more recently talked about, Ariana Calderon, the senior defenseman from Boston University, and of course Sarah Boucher, the senior forward out of Mercyhurst, and the leading scorer for Mercyhurst going to New Hampshire. Sarah, during her senior campaign, played 38 games and had 18 goals and 22 assists for a total of 40 points. Of course, and I'm sorry, I forgot. Ariana did have during her senior campaign, she did play 35 games and had 3 goals and 8 assists. Next, for leaving New Hampshire, that is in the transfer portal, is their sophomore goaltender, Ava Hills. Ava did, during her sophomore campaign, play 2 games, had a 3.27 goals against average and a .846 save percentage, did not have any wins, and has not yet committed anywhere. New Hampshire did have one player transfer midway through the 23-24 season, which was their sophomore defenseman, Autumn Mish. Autumn played 3 games during her sophomore campaign, did not have any goals or assists. She did leave New Hampshire already for Utica, for the Division 3 school of Utica. Next on the list here is Northeastern. Northeastern is adding Kate Davis, the senior forward out of Minnesota Duluth. Kate did play 22 games during her senior year and had 2 goals and 2 assists for a total of 4 points. Kate is a former U18 player for Team USA. Next in the transfer portal for Northeastern is Alyssa Anicolas, the sophomore forward. Alyssa did play 7 games during her sophomore campaign had 1 goal and 1 assist for a total of 2 points. Her sister Sydney, of course, plays at Sacred Heart. So she is more than likely going to transfer to Sacred Heart. Next here is going to be Providence. Providence did add 1 player from Lindenwood, which was Sarah Daves, who we had talked about earlier in the last episode. Their sophomore defenseman in Lindenwood, who played 32 games with 13 goals and 18 assists for a total of 31 points. Next, of course, there are 4 players in the transfer portal for Providence, and those include their senior goaltender, Marilee Kingsley. Marilee played 14 games during her senior campaign, had a 2.77 goals against average, a .889 save percentage, and 2 wins in Providence. She has not yet committed anywhere just yet. Next is their senior forward, Lindsay Bochna, a former U18 player for Team Canada. Lindsay, during her senior campaign, did play 30 games and had 8 goals and 10 assists for a total of 18 points. Next in the transfer portal for Providence is Claire Tayo, the senior defenseman. Claire did play 35 games during her senior campaign, had no goals and 8 assists. And next, the only player from Providence that has committed anywhere is Maddie Coheney, the senior forward. Of course, Maddie did play 35 games during her senior campaign and had 3 goals and 9 assists for a total of 12 points. She is committed to Robert Morris, one of the schools that we covered in the last episode. And the last school for Hockey East is going to be Vermont. Vermont, of course, is adding 2 players from the transfer portal. One very big name from Minnesota, which is Josie Hemp, the freshman defenseman who did not see any action during her freshman campaign, is transferring from the University of Minnesota to Vermont. And the next player that they have added from the portal is from Maine. I think we just more recently talked about her, Ashley Kovac, the freshman defenseman who played 32 games during her freshman camp. Ashley, of course, played 32 games during her freshman campaign and had 5 goals and 6 assists for a total of 11 points. Now, leaving from Vermont is their sophomore defenseman from Team Finland at the Women's World, Krista Parkonen. She has 28. Krista has played 28 games in her sophomore campaign, had 5 goals and 14 assists for a total of 19 points. She has not yet committed anywhere. And next is their senior goaltender, Jessie McFerrin, who played 21 games during her senior campaign, had a 2.51 goals against average and a .897 save percentage, and had 9 wins. Jessie is leaving Vermont to go to Minnesota State of WCHA. Next is the NEWHA. So leaving out of the schools in the NEWHA, of course, is Assumption, Franklin Pierce, LIU, Post, Sacred Heart, St. Alsum, St. Michael's, and Stonehill. So let's get started with the NEWHA. Assumption has not added any players from the portal, but does have 3 players in the portal, including Caitlin Micas, the freshman goaltender, who played 2 games during her freshman campaign, had a 5.25 goals against average and a .841 save percentage. Did not have any wins during her freshman year. She has not yet committed anywhere. Next is Ella Rago, the freshman forward. Ella, during her freshman year, did play 35 games, had 3 goals and 8 assists for a total of 11 points. Next is Lily Corso, the freshman defenseman. During her freshman year, Lily did play 32 games with one and had 1 goal and 2 assists for a total of 3 points. Next, of course, is Franklin Pierce. Franklin Pierce has not added any players from the transfer portal, but does have 5 players in the transfer portal, which is Emily Priev, the senior forward. Emily did play 35 games during her senior year, had 7 goals and 14 assists for a total of 21 points, and is not yet committed, has not transferred anywhere just yet. Next is the sophomore forward, Memphis Metronus. Memphis played 33 games during her sophomore campaign, had 3 goals and 3 assists for a total of 6 points. Next is, and she has not transferred to anywhere just yet. Next, of course, is the sophomore defenseman, Kylie Hostin, from Franklin Pierce. Of course, she played 34 games during her sophomore campaign, had 1 goal and 2 assists for a total of 3 points, and she has not yet committed anywhere outside of, or she has not transferred yet from Franklin Pierce. Next is Grace Shushak, the sophomore forward. Grace, during her sophomore campaign, did play 34 games and had she did have 8 goals and 5 assists during her sophomore campaign for a total of 13 points. And last but not least, leaving Franklin Pierce, that is in the transfer portal right now, is Olivia Koluski, the sophomore goaltender. Olivia, during her sophomore campaign, did play 9 games and had a goals against average of 2.03, a save percentage of .926, and had 3 wins while at Franklin Pierce. Next school here is LIU. LIU at the moment has not added anyone from the transfer portal, but they do have 4 players in the transfer portal, including one that has already committed to another school. They do have the 2-way forward and defenseman Salida Campbell, the senior. Kalita did play 37 games during her senior campaign. Did not have any goals, but did have 2 assists for a total of 2 points during her senior campaign. She has not yet committed anywhere just yet. Next is Sage McKay, the senior defenseman. Sage did play 33 games during her senior campaign and had no goals and 2 assists for a total of 2 points. And Sage has not yet committed anywhere. Next is Tindra Holm. Something notable about Tindra is that she is a women's role player for the team for Team Sweden. Tindra, during her junior campaign, did play 32 games, had a goals against average of 1.94, and had a separate save percentage of .940. She did have a total of 23 wins during her junior campaign. She is leaving LIU to go to Minnesota Duluth of the WCHA. And of course, that will sort of pack the UMD goaltending, and we'll sort of talk about that later on. But next in the transfer portal for LIU is Michaela Lento, the senior forward. Michaela played 37 games during her senior campaign, did have 20 goals and 11 assists for a total of 31 points. She has not yet transferred anywhere yet, but she is a 2-time transfer. She did play at Penn State before she transferred to LIU. Next school on this in the NEWHA is Post. Post has not added anyone from the transfer portal, but does have one player in the transfer portal, which includes their junior goaltender Grace Gosborg. Uh, Grace, of course, during her junior campaign, did play 21 games. Did have a 3.1 goals against average and a .924 save percentage for a total of 5 points. She has not yet transferred to anywhere yet. Next on the list is, of course, Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart has not added anyone just yet from the transfer portal, but does have a total of 5 players in the transfer portal. First player in the transfer portal is their senior forward, Paige McNeil. Paige, during her senior campaign, did play 36 games and had 9 goals and 9 assists for a total of 18 points. She has not yet transferred to any other school. Next is the senior defenseman, Maddie Rinklin. The senior defenseman did play 27 games during her senior campaign and had no goals but 2 assists. Next is Macy Medrin, the sophomore defenseman. She did play 32 games during her sophomore campaign, did not have any goals or assists. Next in the portal is Ilya Riskamp. Ilya did play 38 games during her sophomore campaign, had 4 goals and 2 assists for a total of 6 points. And once again, another player who has transferred midway through the 23-24 season is the sophomore forward from Sacred Heart, Jenna Nilks. During her sophomore campaign with Sacred Heart, Jenna did play 9 games, had 1 goal and no assists for a total of 1 point. And Jenna did leave Sacred Heart to go to Norwich, a Division III school. Next is St. Elsem. St. Elsem has not added anyone from the transfer portal, but does have one player in the transfer portal, which is their freshman goaltender, Courtney Stagman. Courtney, during her freshman campaign, did play 30 games. She does have a 2.29 save percentage, 2.29 goals against average and a .919 save percentage, and has a total of 14 wins. St. Michael's does not have anybody in the transfer portal or has added anybody from the transfer portal. Next is Stonehill. Stonehill has not added anybody from the portal, but has 2 players in the portal, including one that we more recently talked about in an episode here, which is Alexis Petford, the sophomore forward from Stonehill, who transferred out to Colgate. Of course, was Stonehill's leading scorer during her sophomore campaign, having played 39 games and had 20 goals and 15 assists for a total of 35 points. Next player to transfer out of Stonehill is Mauvie Carey, the senior defenseman. During Mauvie's sophomore campaign, she did play 39 games for 4 goals and had 4 goals and 5 assists for a total of 9 points. Next, we get to the very last conference, which is going to be the WCHA, the Western Conference Hockey League or Hockey Association. In the WCHA, there are a few schools here. Some of the big blue bloods, which include Bemidji State, the University of Minnesota Duluth, Minnesota State, the Ohio State, St. Cloud State, St. Thomas, and Wisconsin. So let's get started on this one. We're going to start off with Bemidji State. Bemidji State has added 2 players from the transfer portal, including one from in-state rival, the University of Minnesota. Isa Golati, the freshman forward from Minnesota, did play 1 game during her freshman campaign. Did not have any goals or assists. Did transfer from Minnesota to Bemidji State. Next is the senior goaltender from Penn State, Josie Button. She transferred from Penn State, but Josie during her senior campaign did play 22 games, had a 2.32 goals against average, .911 save percentage, and 10 wins. Next in the transfer portal for Bemidji, of course, is Madison Focher, the sophomore goaltender in Bemidji. The sophomore goaltender, of course, did get one game during her sophomore campaign. Did not have a goals against or a save percentage or a win. Next is, of course, Michaela Zilchich, the sophomore forward. Michaela, during her sophomore year, did play 36 games. Did not have a goal, but did have 3 assists for a total of 3 points. Next, the last but not least, the last player to be in the transfer portal for Bemidji State is Abby Thompson, the junior goaltender. Abby during her during her junior campaign did play 20 games, had a 5.49 goals against average, a .867 save percentage, and no wins. Next is, of course, the University of Minnesota. University of Minnesota does not have anybody that they have added from the portal. Of course, we have talked about 2 of their players, even one more recently, who have transferred out, which would be is a Goetti, the freshman forward who only played 1 game, and then left Minnesota to go to Bemidji, and the freshman defenseman Josie Hemp, who left Minnesota to go to Vermont. Other players in the transfer portal for the University of Minnesota include the senior defenseman Josie Dunn, whose sister does play at The Ohio State University. Josie did play 5 games during her senior campaign and did not have a goal or an assist. Next is the junior forward Tristan Tower. She did play 1 game during her junior year and did not have a goal or an assist. And she, of course, has not yet committed anywhere. Next would be the junior forward, Sadie Lindsay. Sadie did play 35 games during her senior campaign and had 2 goals and 3 assists for a total of 5 points. Next, of course, we've got Minnesota Duluth. Minnesota Duluth, of course, we've talked about at least 2 of their players who have already been who have been added from the transfer portal and who they have lost from the transfer portal. So let me recap. Minnesota Duluth has added Tindra Holm from LIU and Nina Stegoof from Quinnipiac. So these are the following players who they have lost in the transfer portal, or who are in the transfer portal at the moment, actually. Which is, of course, Kate Davis, the senior forward, is leaving Minnesota Duluth to go to Northeastern. Is a former U.S. U18 team, or U.S. Part of the former U18 team for USA Hockey. Next is Kate McLean, their sophomore goaltender, leaving Minnesota Duluth to go to The Ohio State, and is, of course, a former U18 player for Hockey Canada. Next is Danny Burnett, the sophomore forward. She is leaving Minnesota Duluth to go to Maine. And last but not least is their freshman defenseman, Quinn Dunkel. She has not yet committed to she has not transferred to another team just yet. Next is Minnesota State. Minnesota State, of course, is adding the Vermont senior goaltender Jesse McPersons, who is transferring in from Vermont to Minnesota State. Another player who has not been on the roster. There's a player in the transfer portal right now who was not listed on Minnesota State's roster for the second semester. Lauren Barobo. She is transferring. She is in the transfer portal. The senior goaltender, of course, did play 12 games before not being listed on the roster. During her senior campaign, Lauren played 12 games, had a 2.62 goals against average and a .904 save percentage, and had 6 wins as a goaltender. Next is The Ohio State University. Of course, we talked about a few of these players that they do have that they have added from the portal. So let me recap those. Brooke Disher from Boston University has transferred from Boston University to the Ohio State. Sarah Skwinderski, of course, the sophomore defenseman from Clarkson, has transferred to the Ohio State, and Haley McLeodon, the sophomore goaltender from Minnesota Duluth, has transferred to the Ohio State. Ohio State does have 2 players in the transfer portal, which include their graduate goaltender Quinn Coots, who during her graduate year played 1 game and had a save percentage of 1.0, with no goals allowed or a win. The second player in the transfer portal is Delaney Fleming, the freshman forward. She played a total of 21 games during her freshman campaign, had 1 goal and 1 assist. Her sister Sawyer Fleming is, of course, a Princeton commit. The next team on the list for the WCHA is St. Cloud State. They have added Allie Quinelly, the senior forward from Merrimack, and they have added the senior forward Bridgia Parent, the senior forward from St. Thomas. Bridgia Parent. Bridgia, of course, is a 2-time transfer. She did transfer from the University of Minnesota Duluth to St. Thomas. In the transfer portal for St. Cloud State is Kenzie Hope, Jaden Britt, Devin Millwater, and Savenja Joy, who is a player for Team Germany at the Women's World. So next school here is St. Thomas. St. Thomas has not added anybody from the transfer portal, but does have quite a few players in the transfer portal, including Kate Hogg, who is their sophomore forward, their sophomore forward, Kate Hogg, their freshman forward, Abby Garvin. I think we just mentioned her. Of course, their senior forward, Bridgia Parent, who is leaving, a 2-time transfer, who played at UMD before going to St. Thomas and now going to St. Cloud State. The senior goaltender, Olivia King, who transferred from the University of Minnesota. Molly Grunhofer, the sophomore forward, is also in the transfer portal for St. Thomas. Maddie Helsmerster, the freshman forward. Abby Promisberger, the junior forward from St. Thomas. The sophomore junior forward, sophomore forward Maria Cooper is also in the transfer portal for St. Thomas, and Emma McCauley, the sophomore defenseman, is in the transfer portal for St. Thomas. The last team of the WCHA would be the University of Wisconsin, who has not added anybody in the transfer portal, but does have 3 players in the transfer portal, including Sophie Helgeson, the junior defenseman, Sophie's sister Kate does play at Sacred Heart. Uh, so my projection, my projection, my guess is that she will go to Sacred Heart. Next is Jane Grevis. There's redshirt sophomore. And of course, last but not least, is Maddie Wheeler, the senior forward, and a former U18 player for Team Canada. So that is all for right now of what I'm going to cover, or at least this is what I was planning on doing for the transfer portal. Let me know if you would like to know more about the transfer portal. In the next episode, we will cover, in the next 2 episodes, we will cover the NCAA women's basketball transfer portal. And that will really just be a main focus on some of the bigger conferences uh, and highlight those names. And then, of course, the WCHA will be, or not WCHA, the WNBA will be covered in the episodes in the 3 episodes from now. Thank you.